Well, Statistician General Pali Lehohla released the 2008 to 2014 Labour Market Dynamics report in Cape Town yesterday. The report looks at the trends in South African labour market, and it ranges from the number of people who are employed, unemployed and work in different sectors. The numbers highlight the negative and positive changes that our economy has been faced with since 2008. For more on this, we are joined in our Pretoria studios. I have to look at the background there to see where our Statistician General is, Pali Lehohla. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, Leah, and thank you, listeners.
All right. Pali, what have been your findings in relation to the unemployment rate decreasing in South Africa?
Well, I think the key question that we have to ask is whether South Africa will see or benefit from what is known as a demographic dividend. And these numbers are trying to answer that question because it has to answer the long-term effects of unemployment and what probably it brings to light to policy. On the positive side, South Africa has bounced back in terms of numbers of the people employed, but that's an absolute number. What you have to look at are proportions. That's the first thing that we are seeing, that we've moved from 14.5 million to about 15.1 million. So the pre-recession numbers have increased. People are now managing to stick to their jobs. And the newly employed have moved from about 10%, which was what we observed in before, by 2011, that has increased to about 13.3%. So in the labour markets, there are positive things that are happening in South Africa. The formal sector has contributed about 738,000 jobs. On the negative side of things, unemployment has remained very stubborn at 25%. That's the one. The key sector, which is manufacturing, where jobs are created, has continuous bled and shared jobs. That's the negative thing. So in general, the negatives are much more than the positives that we see in the labour market between 2008 and 2014, Leanne.
Okay. What is the current number of those employed and unemployed in the youth category? I think that's the most important category that we need to sort of analyse and look at for 2014.
What has happened is that unemployment numbers have increased from about 4.8 to 5.3 million. There's been a huge surge of unemployed. The big problem, as I framed the question, is South Africa going to have a demographic dividend? The people that are able-bodied, who have to work, actually are now unemployed. And that number is a huge number, 5.3 million. Which comes to about 25%. Obviously, if you look at expanded unemployment, you go up to upwards of 30%, 31%. If you go to these numbers by race, the blacks have the thin end of the stick.
Pali, quite interestingly, our economy is really known to have different activities in the informal and the formal sector. But if we had to look at the 2014 sector and the period and the sector that really created most jobs, what does it indicate in the findings?
It's the communities and the government services that have actually created a number of jobs as a sector. But when you look at formal, informal, the split is 738,000 jobs in the formal sector and about 300,000 or 400,000 jobs in the informal sector in that period, giving it 1.1 million jobs created. And that gave us a bounce back to about 15.1 million jobs.
Okay.
The labor absorption is at 42%, which is 3.4 percentage points lower than where it was in 2008. So we are still actually bleeding from the post-recession period. Of course, we had the longest mining strike, which took a lot of growth in the economy, followed by the car manufacturing strike. And of course, the public sector is threatening a strike.
Yeah.
So things don't look that great.
Just very quickly, Paddy, we had a slide on just a few minutes ago, or a few seconds ago. In terms of the demographics of the labour market, is there an increase or a decline between the working age population by sex in this period? And what actually created this change? Let's have a look at these numbers.
Well, at the end, there is something called a demographic transition. This is essentially the growing number of the working force. And this has to generate necessarily, if you invest well, a demographic dividend. But you can't get a dividend if you haven't invested. And these investments are long-term, are generational. We haven't invested sufficiently in education because of our past. In fact, there were deliberate strategies that worked against investing in black education, and the consequences are a growing middle area population of 15 to 64 that is not employable. And this is where the question is, can South Africa have a demographic dividend? The answer is no. Given that then that we have lost that opportunity, what then do we do in managing the crisis forward?
All right, let's leave it there for now. Paddy, thank you very much for talking to us. Quite interesting findings coming out of this labour market dynamics report that was released in Cape Town yesterday. And of course, that's our Statistician General, Pali Lehohla, unpacking some of the details for us.